Did you reject a one-on-one meeting with the Canadian Prime Minister, Justin Trudeau?
Yeah, I did.
Why?
Because his tariffs are too high and he doesn't seem to want to move, and I've told him forget about it. And frankly, we're thinking about just taxing cars coming in from Canada. That's the mother lode. That's the big one. We're very unhappy with the negotiations and the negotiating style of Canada. We don't like their representative very much. They've taken advantage. I love Canada, by the way. I have so many friends. I have everybody. It's so many friends. But that has nothing to do with this. I'm representing the United States. Mexico was totally, I mean, they were great. By the way, the new president has been great. The deal is done. Now it has to go through Congress, and a lot of things have to happen. But we've done. Bob Lighthizer, who's here someplace. Where's Bob? Bob. Bob Lighthizer has done a great job of negotiating, as they have. But the deal is done. It's up to Congress. But Canada has treated us very badly. They've treated our farmers in Wisconsin and New York State and a lot of other states very badly. Dairy products, 300%. 300%. How do you sell a dairy product at 300%? The answer is you don't. What it is a barrier. It's basically they're saying, we don't have any barriers. By the way, it's 300%, so you don't send it in because you can't compete. So Canada has a long way to go. I must be honest with you. We're not getting along at all with their negotiators. We think their negotiators have taken advantage of our country for a long time. We had people that didn't know what they were doing, and that's why we had, over the last 5 or 6 years, if you average it out, we had $800 billion a year in trade losses. It's ridiculous. It's not going to happen.
What about NAFTA? Sir, Mr. President, NAFTA. What does that mean for NAFTA? Will you be pulling out of NAFTA?
I don't like NAFTA. I never liked it. It's been very bad for the United States. It's been great for Canada. It's been great for Mexico. Very bad for us.
Will you pull out of the
I'm not going to use the name NAFTA. I refuse to use it. I've seen thousands of plants and factories close. I've seen millions of jobs lost to auto companies that moved. I mean, Mexico has 25% of our auto business now because of NAFTA. Under our deal, it's not going to happen anymore. I hate to tell you it's not. We're going to keep companies. And I told the Mexicans, I said, we have to keep companies, but they're getting a lot also. They're getting other things. They're getting a lot of good things. Mexico made a very good deal. But with Canada, it's very tough. What we're doing is, if we made a deal with Canada, which is a good chance still, but I'm not making anything near what they want to do.
Mm-hmm. But are you going to notify Congress of
what we're probably
NAFTA?
going to do is call it the USMC, like the United States Marine Corps, which I love. General Kelly likes it even more. Where's General Kelly? He likes that. USMC, which would be U.S., Mexico, Canada. But it'll probably or possibly be just USM. It'll be United States and Mexico.
Yes or no?
Canada will come along. Now, if Canada doesn't make a deal with us, we're going to make a much better deal. We're going to tax the cars that come in. We will put billions and billions of dollars into our treasury. And frankly, we'll be very happy because it's actually more money than you can make under any circumstance with making a deal. Okay? Good job, too. You do a very good job. Really good. Yes, please, Mr. Kurd. Go ahead.
Thank you very much for your time, Mr. President. Two quickly questions. What will be the USA relations with the Kurds?
Oh, I thought I just answered that.
Post-ISIS.
Yeah. Okay, we're trying to get along very well. We do get along great with the Kurds. We're trying to help them a lot. Don't forget, that's their territory. We have to help them. I want to help them. Go ahead. What's next? They fought with us. They fought with us. They died with us. They died. We lost tens of thousands of Kurds died fighting ISIS. They died for us and with us and for themselves. They died for themselves. But they're great people. And we have not forget. We don't forget. I don't forget what happens someday later, but I can tell you that I don't forget. These are great people. Okay. Yes, ma'am, please.
About Iran, Mr. President, about Iran, one question. What is your clear plan to stop Iranian influence in Iraq, in Syria, and especially in Iraq?
I think you've seen that. I must tell you, I don't mind your question, because that happens to be, I'll get you in one second.
Thank you.
I think there's been no greater change, other than maybe China, because China, unfortunately, their markets have dropped, would you say 30% in the last 4 months, right? I think I watched you recently when you said that. I said, I think she's wrong. I think it's actually 32, but that's okay, but a lot. There's been no, other than maybe that, but even that, because China is a very special place. And Iran is a very special place. But I think there's been no country that's changed so much as Iran. In the last 6 months, since I took off the horrible, horrible Iran nuclear deal, as they called it, one of the dumbest deals ever made. As an example, why didn't they take care of Yemen in the deal? Why didn't they take care of Syria in the deal? You know what Kerry said the reason? It was too complicated. We're given $150 billion. We paid $1.8 billion in cash. Cash. This whole room would be filled up with $100 bills. And you'd need probably 5 rooms like this. We gave $1.8 billion in cash. Why didn't we take care of Yemen? Why didn't we take care of Syria and other? And he said, because it was too complicated. Well, you just gave all your cards. You gave them $150 billion. And now Yemen's a mess, but it's getting better. And Syria is a mess. And I was responsible, and I hope it stays that way, when I put out on social media a few weeks ago about Idlib province. I said, don't do it. And I'll tell you, it happened where I was at a meeting with a lot of supporters, and a woman stood up and she said, there is a province in Syria with 3 million people. Right now, the Iranians, the Russians, and the Syrians are surrounding that province, and they're going to kill my sister, and they're going to kill millions of people in order to get rid of 25,000 or 35,000 terrorists or enemies of theirs, but I think we can call them terrorists. And I said, that's not going to happen. I didn't hear of Idlib province. And I came back to New York, and I picked up the failing New York Times. I hate to admit it was the New York Times, but it was the failing New York Times. And I opened it up, not on the front page, but there was a very big story. I said, wow, that's the same story that the woman told me that I found hard to believe, because how would anyone do that with 3 million people? And it said that they were being surrounded, and they were going in and starting literally the next day, they were going to drop bombs all over the place and perhaps kill millions of people in order to get 35,000 terrorists. And I put out on social media and elsewhere, I gave Mike Pompeo, John Bolton, everybody these orders. Don't let it happen. I said, don't let it happen. That doesn't mean they can't be selective. They can't be, go in and they've got to do what they've got to do with terrorists, assume they're terrorists, but don't kill millions of people. And it stopped. You saw that. Nobody's going to give me credit, but that's okay. That's okay, because the people know. I have had more Syrians thank me for that. This was about 4 weeks ago I put that out. I said, they're surrounding a city of 3 million people. They're going to start bombing the city. Don't let it happen. And I meant it, too. I meant it. And millions of people have been saved. And I gave today great credit to Iran. I don't know if you heard that. I gave great credit to Iran, to Russia, and to Syria for not doing it. Now I hope it's going to be surgical, meaning go in and do, it's lengthy and everything else, and they possibly have to do it. But I think millions of people would have been killed, and that would have been a shame. And hopefully, and I have to tell you, Turkey has been a big help. Turkey has been great. Turkey's helped us very much with that whole situation. Yes, yes.
Thank you, Mr. President.
Good, thank you very much.
Touching back on Iran, of course, this week you put out a call to action to other countries to rally with America to put pressure on Iran. Rouhani's still calling for the U.S. to come back into the old deal. But after meeting with world leaders this week, did you make any progress towards a potential new deal?
It doesn't matter what world leaders think on Iran. Iran's going to come back to me, and they're going to make a good deal. I think. Maybe not. Deals. You never know. But they're suffering greatly. They're having riots in every city, far greater than they were during the Green period with President Obama. Far greater. When President Obama stuck up for government, not the people, he probably would have had a much different Iran had he not done that. But I'm sticking up for the people. I am with the people of Iran. But here's the thing. They have rampant inflation. Their money is worthless. Everything is going wrong. They have riots in the street. You can't buy bread. You can't do anything. It's a disaster. At some point, I think they're going to want to come back and they're going to say, hey, can we do something? And I'm very simple. I just don't want them to have nuclear weapons. That's all. Is that too much to ask? I don't want them to have nuclear weapons. I want them to have a great economy. I want them to sell so much oil so that the oil prices, I'm not happy with OPEC. I told them, I'm not happy with OPEC. We take care of all these people. We defend them. They wouldn't be there for 2 weeks if it wasn't for me and the United States and our much stronger armed forces than it was, because our armed forces was depleted. We had old equipment. Now we have, hey, you know better than anybody, $700 billion and $716 billion. We have the most incredible new jets and everything. We need it. Not that I want to spend it, although it is jobs. It's all made in the United States. But Iran has to come back and they have to talk. And I'm not doing this from strength or weakness. I'm just saying at some point I think they're going to have to come back. If you look at what's going on, companies are leaving left and right. Mercedes-Benz just left. They're all leaving. They don't want to be in Iran because they have a choice. Do they want to be with Iran or do they want to be with us? And we picked up $10 trillion since my election. We were being caught by China. Now it's going the other way. People can't believe it. People have never seen this situation with China. Everything's always been for 20 years, oh, China's so great. China's so great. You don't hear that so much anymore. I love China. I think they're great. But you don't hear that so much anymore. You know who's great now? We're great now. Okay, how about just a couple of more? Now, I could be doing this all day long. I could be doing this all day long. Should we continue for a little while? It doesn't matter to me. A couple of more? I don't care. New York Times. Come on, New York Times. The failing New York Times. Stand up. Go ahead. No, I'm talking about the Times is failing. You are far from failing. Go ahead.
Okay, but you're not. You were pointing to me, so you meant me.
The Times are very interesting, though. The Times, I think they're going to endorse me. I think that ABC, well, Fox, I like Fox, I really do. But I think ABC, CBS, NBC, The Times, they're all going to endorse me because if they don't, they're going out of business. Can you imagine if you didn't have me? Go ahead. What would you like to say?
Just to be sure, I know you were pointing to me, but I work for PBS News.
I know that. No, I know that.
Okay.
I know.
So I want to ask you, yesterday you were talking about your administration's accomplishments at the United Nations, and a lot of the leaders laughed. Why do you think they were laughing?
Well, that's fake news.
And what was that experience like?
It's fake news. And it was covered that way. Okay. So I said that since my election, our economy has become the hottest in the world. Tax reductions, regulations, confidence levels are the highest in 18 years, really soon to be historic. Unemployment is the lowest in the history of our country. You look at black unemployment, you look at Asian unemployment, you look at women 65 years. The unemployment numbers are among the best we've ever had, ever. The numbers of new companies pouring into our country, which nobody thought was possible. And I said this, and I was in front of a large group of highly professional people, most of whom are from either other countries or the United Nations, people that aren't big into clapping, applauding, smiling. And I heard a little rustle. As I said, our country is now stronger than ever before. It's true. I mean, it is true. And I heard a little rustle, and I said, it's true. And I heard smiles, and I said, oh, I didn't know there'd be that guy. They weren't laughing at me. They were laughing with me. We had fun. That was not laughing at me. So the fake news said people laughed at President Trump. They didn't laugh at me. People had a good time with me. We were doing it together. We had a good time. They respect what I've done. The United States is respected again. The United States was not respected. Everybody was taking advantage of us, from jobs and taking our companies and not paying the price to so many other things, even military protection. I told a number of countries over the last few days, I said, listen, you're a very rich country. We protect you. Without our protection, you would have real problems. You would have real problems. I said, you should reimburse us for this protection. Why are we protecting you? And do you want to know what they said? After about 2 minutes of talking, they agreed with me. And you can ask this group of very talented people. They agreed with me. But they said, one of them said, but Mr. President, nobody ever asked us for that. They never asked us for that. Nobody's ever said, you should pay. These are really wealthy countries. I mean, I'll be honest, I just asked Japan. I said, we're defending you. You're a very wealthy country. You're sending us millions of cars. You're making a fortune. We have a tremendous trade deficit with you. And we're defending you, and we're subsidizing your military with a massive amount of money. I said it to South Korea. We have 32,000 soldiers in South Korea. They're very wealthy. These are great countries. These are very wealthy countries. I said, why aren't you reimbursing us for our costs? And you know what? They look at me, and they can't even answer it, because there's no answer. If they're a poor country and they needed protection and people were going to die, I'm all for protecting them. I don't want 10 cents. But when wealthy countries that have massive trade surpluses with us, massive, and then on top of that, we're paying for their military, or we're paying for a lot of their military, that doesn't work. How about two more and we'll call it?
Mr. President, really quickly, and Mr. President, you said you feel a kinship. You said you feel a kinship with Brett Kavanaugh, and Mr. President, really quickly, you said you felt a kinship with Brett Kavanaugh. You said that you also, your false allegations that you feel like were made against you make you feel like you don't want to believe these women. What message do you think?
No, I didn't say that. Why do you say that?
Please
Fake news. Why did I say that?
Well, can you please explain then what you
Excuse
were
me.
talking about in your
And by the way, I
false
think you do a very
allegations?
good job, but I didn't say that. I do watch you, and I think you do a very good job, but I didn't say that.
So could you explain
I
what you
said,
meant?
exactly, I look forward to watching her. I do want to hear what she says. And maybe she'll say, I could be convinced of anything. Maybe she'll say something. But in the meantime, I have to tell you, he's one of the highest quality human beings. He's a tremendous man. He's a tremendous genius. He's a great intellect. He was, I believe, #1 at Yale. Is that a correct statement? Number one in his class at Yale. He was a great student in law. He was, you know, I've heard his name. I didn't know him. Didn't know him. Until this whole thing, I didn't know him. But I heard his name for 10 years. And you know how I heard his name? Everybody was saying he should be on the Supreme Court. I said, who is he? His name is Brett Kavanaugh. And he should be. He's the most brilliant person. He's the most brilliant lawyer. They were talking about him on the Supreme Court 10 years ago. With all of that, I want to hear what she has to say.
But you said that you don't feel, but you said that you feel like there have been numerous false allegations against you, and that because
I've had many false.
You understand what he means.
I've had many false statements against me, and if the press would have reported, I would have been very happy. I think John Roberts would tell you that you covered the story where the women were paid to say bad things about me. Sean Hannity covered it. I will tell you, when I saw that on Sean Hannity, I actually called him. Believe it or not, I don't speak to him very much, but I respect him. I called him. I said, this is the biggest story. This is a big, big story. He agreed with me. The next day I picked up the papers. There wasn't one word about it. The next day I watched ABC News, John. I watched NBC. I watched CBS. I didn't watch CNN, but next time I'm going to.
And are you okay with
I watched everything. There wasn't one story other than Fox. And it's a big story. It's a shame. Okay, enough. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you.
Is it okay if I give it to the New York Times, Mr.
Go ahead.
President?
That's enough, please.
Okay.
Good job. Good job.
Mr. President, could I ask a question since I am from the New York Times before this gentleman?
Since you're where? Since you where?
I'm actually from the New York Times. Yamiche is my former colleague, and we miss her. But I was hoping I could ask a question.
But I'll let you do it after he does. Is that okay?
That's
I will
perfectly
do that.
well.
In honor of a paper I once loved.
Thank you.
Go ahead.
Mr. President, my name's Edward Zoll with True News. Today you met with Bibi Netanyahu from Israel, and you brought up actually that you support a two-state solution for the Palestinian-Israeli crisis there. Can you give us any more preview of what this great deal, the peace deal?
Well, I'd love to be able to make a deal with the Israelis and the Palestinians. You know, my whole life I was told that's the toughest deal. And I disagree. I think health care is probably tougher, okay? You want to know the truth. But it is tough. But we're going to take care of that, too. That's going to get taken care of. We've already taken care of a lot of it. But my life, I've always heard the deal between, as you know, Israel and the Palestinians. That's like the toughest deal. Every possible thing is tough about that. I think we're going to make a deal. I think we're going to make a deal. So at one of our many meetings today, I was with Bibi Netanyahu, a man who I have a lot of respect for, a man who's been extremely nice to me. I'm very happy that I did the whole thing with Jerusalem and the embassy, which, by the way, we got open in 4 months for less than $500,000. And the budget was over $1 billion, right?
Yes.
So we saved, let's say, $1 billion. That's not so bad. And it's open. And it's beautiful, by the way. Jerusalem stone, one of my favorite stones. I will tell you the question. Somebody said today, well, this is the first news conference in a long time. I said, what do you mean? I did like 5 today. Every time I sit, I take a lot of questions from people that are screaming like maniacs in the back of the room, meaning reporters. And one of the reporters, I won't say that it was John Roberts that said that, I refuse. But one of the, it was, but that's okay. Don't feel guilty, John. But one of the reporters that was screaming asked about the one state, two state. And I said, I think the two state will happen. I think it's in one way more difficult because it's a real estate deal, because you need meets and bounds and you need lots of carve-outs and lots of everything. It's actually a little tougher deal. But another way it works better because you have people governing themselves. And yes. So they asked me about that. I said, well, I think the two-state will happen. I think we're going to go down the two-state road. And I'm glad I got it out. And Jared, who's so involved, he loves Israel. He loves Israel. But he's also going to be very fair with the Palestinians. He understands it takes two people to be happy, two groups of people to be happy. Everybody's got to be happy. And that's why it's so tough. Because there's been so much hatred and anger for so many years. That's what probably the number one ingredient of toughness is. But they asked me, I said, I think it's going to be a two-state. And you know what I did today? By saying that, I put it out there. And if you ask most of the people in Israel, they agree with that. But nobody wanted to say it. It's a big thing to put it out. It's a very big thing to put it out. Now, the bottom line, if the Israelis and the Palestinians want one state, that's okay with me. If they want two states, that's okay with me. I'm happy if they're happy. I'm a facilitator. I want to see if I can get a deal done so that people don't get killed anymore. When we had in Saudi Arabia, we had one of the great conferences in history. Many of you were there, probably all of you were there. It's one of the most beautiful 2 days. That and China. Two of the most incredible events I've ever seen. I've never seen anything like it. And we had, I believe, 58 Muslim countries, the leaders, the kings, the emirs, the absolute leaders from every. There was nobody in second place. They were the leaders of the whole thing. And unbeknownst to anybody else, people would come up to me individually. It wasn't a setup. They'd come up to me and say, sir, you can't have peace in the Middle East without peace between the Israelis and the Palestinians. I said, why? What difference? Why does that matter so much? They said, it just is impossible to make peace in the Middle East unless you have between the Israelis. So I heard that from one, the king of Saudi Arabia, who's a great guy, King Solomon. And then somebody else came up. And he wasn't told, oh, go up and say it. I know where they're coming from. And I must have had 12 leaders say it, and they just said it. And I started to realize that peace between Israel and the Palestinians for the Middle East is a very important thing, and we're trying very hard to get it. I think probably two-state is more likely, but you know what? If they do a single, if they do a double, I'm okay with it if they're both happy. If they're both happy, I'm okay with either. I think the two-state is more likely. Okay, how about one? Go ahead.
New York Times? New York Times?
Okay.
Thank you, sir.
I would have gotten a bad story in the New York Times, but I will anyway, so I guess it doesn't matter. We'll do you after that, and then we'll call it quits.
We're kind of thriving, not failing these days.
You're doing very well.
Yeah.
Say thank you, Mr. Trump.
I think I'll stop short of that.
I wonder how you do. You know, all my life I've had very few stories, but I've had some on the front page of the New York Times. Now I think I average about 3 or 4 a day, right?
That is
and
true.
of the 3 or 4, they're all negative. No matter what I do, they're negative. But you know what? That's okay. I still love the paper. Go ahead.
I wanted to come back to China because I think what
Yes.
you announced today was really important.
I agree.
You talk about this friendship you have with Xi Jinping, and yet essentially what you did today is accused his government
That's right.
of interfering in our internal affairs, subverting our democratic process, and doing it to hurt you, the Republican Party.
Doing it to help them.
And your backers.
Yeah, doing it to help them.
So how can a guy who does that be your friend?
I think that we are able to, and maybe he's not anymore. I'll be honest with you. I think we had a very good friendship. I think we had a very good relationship. We understand each other. They are doing studies on Donald Trump. They're trying to figure it all out because this has never happened to them before. It's never happened. Think of it. You've covered very well. You've never seen this happen. They're having big problems. I don't want them to have problems, but they got to make a fair deal, just like Canada's got to make a fair deal. I believe that he and I have a very good chemistry together. And I can tell you that about many leaders. I can also tell you a few where I don't feel I'll ever have a chemistry with them. I don't want to have a chemistry with them. And for those people, I'll have Pompeo, Nikki, Bolton, Jared. I can go our general, I'll have our general, or if they can't do it, I'll have Sarah Huckabee do it, right? But for the most part, I have very good with Prime Minister Abiy. Very good with President Moon. By the way, what President Moon said last night, I know you won't report it, but Brett Baer interviewed him last night, and he asked him about me. I can't say because you would say I'm too braggadocious, but what he said about me last night was an unbelievable thing. Couldn't have happened without President Trump, and it never would happen without President Trump, and nobody else could do it. You'll take a look. But I will tell you, China is very special, very special. They're incredible people. It's an incredible country. What they've done is unbelievable. And it all started with the WTO. It was a defective deal. And it all started without the WTO. China is not China as we know it today. And then it started also by our people that are standing right in this position, that are in the Oval Office, another way of saying it, allowed them to get away with murder, allowed a lot of countries to get away with murder. I think we still probably have a very good relationship. But you know what? In honor of you, I will tomorrow make a call to him. Say, hey, how you doing? Okay? You don't mind paying billions of dollars a month?
I just have two small follow-ups. One is, how would you compare the level of interference you see today from the Chinese to what Russia did in 2016?
Well, I think it's different. If you look at the Des Moines Register, they have ads that are made to look like editorials saying about, oh, you got to stop Trump, you got to stop him, you got to vote against him. My farmers are so incredible. These are patriots. You know, on a network that doesn't like me very much, which is most of them, but a network that doesn't really treat me very good, they interviewed farmers. And they got hurt because, you know, all of a sudden China stops buying. By the way, they've started buying again. I don't know if you've noticed. And soybeans are going up and things are going up. And we've had very little hurt from what I've done. In fact, the markets have gone up and the farmers are going to do great. But ultimately, they had farmers. And these guys are amazing. I love them. And they voted for me and they love me. And they said, we don't care if we get hurt. He's doing the right thing. And, you know, a lot of people, it's a complex game. A lot of people don't know exactly what it is. They don't know how to define tariff. They don't know it is really different than a tax, although it's getting close. But they know that for the first time in many, many years, they have a president that's fighting for them, that's not letting their jobs be taken to other countries, that's not allowing the kind of abuse that when you look at what happened as an example with NAFTA, and for years, because it was never changed, NAFTA was a defective deal the day it was signed. You know why? Because they had a VAT tax of 17%, and nobody from this country knew that. And by the time they found out, which was about a week later, nobody went and changed it. So you went many years, and they never changed it. There was a VAT tax that Mexico got. So we were 17 or 16 points behind before we even started. NAFTA was a horrible thing. So the farmers, and by the way, the steelworkers, you know, I stopped the dumping. The dumping was horrible. And now if they want to dump, that's okay, but they've got to pay the United States of America 25% on everything they dump. That's okay. But as I told you before, steel is doing phenomenally well. But the farmers say, This man's fighting for us. No president has ever fought for us before. And you really have to study what's happened over the 15 years with the farmers. The farmers have been decimated over a 15-year period. They've been decimated. The farmers are going to come out great. These are great people. They're great, great patriots. I think we should finish with that one. Is that okay?
Okay.
Go ahead. Let's go. Fast.
Sure.
Always like to finish with a good one. Elton John said, when you hit that last tune and it's good, don't go back.
Well, let me ask
have you ever seen? They do great, they're great, they hit the last tune, everyone goes crazy. Then they go back for an encore, right? And they don't hit it. And they leave, everyone leaves. They said, that wasn't a very good concert, was it? Let's go.
Well, I'll ask you one final question.
Don't make me wrong, go ahead.
Ahead of tomorrow's hearing. Because you were asked earlier in the news conference by
Say it again.
About the hearing tomorrow. You were asked earlier in the news conference by my friend from Sky News about the message that you are sending to the women of the country.
Right.
What about the message that you may be sending to young men? You're a father. What does this moment that we're in, the cultural moment...
It's a very big cultural moment.
Right. So what messages do you have for the young men of America?
You're right. I think it's a great question. This is a very big moment for our country. Because you have a man who's very outstanding, but he's got very strong charges against him. Probably charges that nobody's going to be able to prove. So I could have you chosen for a position. I could have you, anybody. And somebody could say things, and it's happened to me many times, where false statements are made. And honestly, nobody knows who to believe. I could pick another Supreme Court justice. I could pick another one. This could go on forever. Somebody could come and say 30 years ago, 25 years ago, 10 years ago, 5 years ago, he did a horrible thing to me. He did this, he did that, he did that. And honestly, it's a very dangerous period in our country. And it's being perpetrated by some very evil people. Some of them are Democrats, I must say, because some of them know that this is just a game that they're playing. It's a con game. It's at the highest level. We're talking about the United States Supreme Court. This can go on forever. I can pick 5 other people. At a certain point, people are going to say, no, thank you. This is the most coveted job probably in the world. And you know what? I would honestly say, because I interviewed great people for this job. He's great. But I interviewed other great people for this job. I could conceivably imagine going to one of them and saying, it's too bad what happened to this wonderful man. But I'm going to choose you, number 2. I want you to go. And I could conceivably be turned down by somebody that desperately wanted this job 2 months ago. So this is beyond Supreme Court.
Right.
There's nothing beyond Supreme Court. This is beyond Supreme Court. This is everything to do with our country. When you are guilty until proven innocent, it's just not supposed to be that way. Always I heard, you're innocent until proven guilty. I've heard this for so long, and it's such a beautiful phrase. In this case, you're guilty until proven innocent. I think that is a very, very dangerous standard for our country. With that being said, I look forward to what she has to say. I also look very forward to what Judge Kavanaugh has to say. I think it's going to be a very, very important day in the history of our country. And I want to thank you all.
Sir,
we'll do it again.
The message to young men, sir.
Thank you
young
very
men,
much.
young teenage
Thank you very
men.
much.
Nothing to say, sir.
Please, ladies and gentlemen, remain seated as our delegation departs.